Hey guys, it's Tiny Tom Logan back with another video for you. And, oh my god, what am I sitting next to? It's an NZXT Switch 810. Now, for the non-normal subscribers, I will get into the main review in a minute, but I will say from the very beginning, don't forget to subscribe and comment if you like the video. For the regulars, I will say that generally when a product comes out, you'll all be fully aware that I normally cover stuff pretty soon. Which is why when you ask me to do stuff, it's normally pretty pointless, because if I haven't done it already, I'm probably not going to be doing it for whatever reason that there is. But with this Switch, I was asking for this from like when it first got hinted about. It was the end of last year I was chasing after the NZXT guy to try and get it. Now the NZXT guy he works for NZXT, but it's part of like a third party company. And to cut a long story short, he's still not my biggest fan because of the H2 review. But NZXT HQ picked up on the fact of when you were asking for it, it was all over the forums. They noticed that there was a lot of you asking me to review this. So to cut a long story short, NZXT HQ, i.e. this bloke's boss or bosses, waded straight in, sent me one directly, and have given the bloke a slap round the face. So what we are going to do now is we're going to start a complete fresh with NZXT after the review that we did before. Although, to be perfectly honest with you, it's them that needs to start afresh because I didn't do anything wrong. All I did was tell the truth. But anyway, should I be mentioning this or not? I don't know, and I don't particularly care. Now the thing is they sent me a Switch 810, and it's a bit of a shame that it's taken this long, because it is actually bloody brilliant. And it kind of almost makes me want to say maybe they weren't that, or rather maybe the NZXT guy that was ignoring me wasn't that sure whether it was any good or not, which is why he didn't send it to me, because he knew I'd find things wrong with it, which I have done, which we're going to cover. And it's also stuff that I've kind of, as I've been building it and stuff, I've realised that, because I don't generally do these reviews after other people, I've realised that there's a lot of things that other people haven't picked up on. So we're going to be going into that in quite some depth. But anyway, what we're going to do is we're going to start this, and then we're going to go into do it as we normally do, and then we'll have a chuffing huge conclusion at the end. I have got kit in here already. We've got an air cooler in there, but we've got water cooling. I've also got we're going to be going into water cooling in quite some depth, and we're going to be doing it properly as well, not some lame-ass fucking idiot that hasn't got a clue what he's talking about. We're actually going to be telling you what rads you can put in, what configurations you can put in, and actually giving you some proper solid backed up advice on, you know, what you could and should be doing with the rig, because there's a fair bit of it to cover with this, to be perfectly honest with you. And I'm actually a bit disappointed that NZXT didn't send this sooner, because it is wicked. But anyway, what we're going to do is hush my mouth, and we're going to start the review, and we're going to do it the way we normally would do. We'll break into some water cooling advice at the end, and then we'll move on to the big conclusion, and you'll find out what award I've given it. But it's a good one. But anyway, let's move on. Right then, peoples, we're going to start at the front this time rather than the top, because there's a fair amount to cover all over the place, if I'm perfectly honest with you. So we'll start at the front. Now this panel here is for, well, you can see, basically it's a bit of a weird one, because you kind of almost have to push it with one hand and then flip it with your other hand. There's no kind of smooth way to get it to do it otherwise, but yeah, it's not fluid. But anyway, there's a panel there, and then inside this panel you've got two USB 2s, two USB 3s, and the USB 3s have got an internal header. There's an SD card reader here. You've got your headphone and your microphone panels. There's a reset button, and then there's a little button here which is for LEDs. That's something we'll cover in a little bit. Something that I do like though is you've got 4 optical bays. Now this optical bay already has like a stealthed optical bay cover. You've got 2 normal optical bay blank covers, but then this one is a little bit different, because it's got an optical bay cover, but then there's these little slots. Now, it took me a little while to wonder why it would have cutouts in the front. On the other side though, there is a hot swap bay for a hard drive, which you can just pull out, put your hard drive in, slide it back in again, and then that's your hard drive. So basically these little slots here are so that there's a tiny little bit of airflow moving over it. So as the rest of the air moves around in your case, it can pull a little bit of air through and hopefully keep it that little bit cooler. I actually quite like that. Now moving further down, if I just slide the camera down a bit, this is something else that I also really like. Now the design of it will be Marmite. You're either going to love the design or you're going to hate the design. But this front panel section, there's a little NZXT button here. Now there is air vents down the side of the case, or down the side of the front here, to let the air into the front fan. But if you press this button here, it then releases. And basically the whole panel, I need to flip my camera around so I can actually see what you're seeing, comes out, and then there's mesh, dust filtering mesh on there. Now what we will say is that when it's in there, basically you've got a 140mm fan that comes in the front, and you can fit another 140 underneath. You could take this 140 out and fit a 120 and have a 120 underneath if you want as well. But if you use the bottom fan, on the bottom of the front panel, you'll see that there's this mesh section. Now that bit of the mesh section isn't dust filtered, so when it's in the front of your case, like that, part of the fan, that the air that gets brought into the fan won't actually be dust filtered. It's only, say, 25% of the fan, but it's just worth noting that not all of it is dust filtered, so you will still get a bit of air getting through there unrestricted. But the fans are blowing straight over the hard drives, which we'll talk to you about in a bit. But I actually do quite like the fact that this is they've already put a mesh in there, and the mesh is actually removable. This front panel section is actually removable as well. We'll talk to you a little bit more about that later. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to get the camera moved now, and we're going to talk about the roof. Right then peeps, moving on to the roof. Power button. It's not exactly stealth, but it's quite sly in there. And then this is the power light, which I really like. Although we've not seen it lit up yet, I really need to put a cable on it. In fact, that's what I'm going to do now. I'm going to run a cable to it quickly and then turn the old girl on so we can show you. Hey! Due to the wonders of having cables all over the place, that didn't actually take that long. Now right, we've got a hard drive activity light just here, and then we've got the power light here. At least that's what I think it is, so we best turn it on and show you. Now yeah, the power light has just come on there, you can see it in that corner. Hard drive activity light's not exactly flashing at the moment. Now I have definitely connected it up. But one thing I will say is, looking at this now, it's a flipping, this white is a dust magnet. I think if you add the black it might be a bit worse, but it's definitely, you can see all the dust kind of landing on it. It's like wing! Then we have only just built it, so it's probably still a little bit static. But yeah, you can see the light there. I'm just going to move the camera in and see if you can see this, because it is quite difficult at the moment. The camera's having a field day with this, but you can just see there that little line on the front. Now that does look like it should be a button, but it's not. It doesn't do anything, but it does appear that, you know, that it should. You can see slightly better there though. Like there's the hard drive activity light, which at this present moment in time doesn't seem to want to be flashing, although we have got it all hooked up and it is working on the inside. But right, I'm going to turn the system off now, and then we're going to move the camera. Right then peeps, onto the roof panel. As you can see, this white area at the top, I'll just move the camera around. You see it goes right from one end of the case to the next. There's a little button here, or a lever or slider, whatever you want to call it. Opens the like the vents up. Now if I move the camera in and we'll rejig again, there's actually like push release mechanisms. There's two little dots at the back, and you press it and it releases this roof panel, and then we can get our look inside. Now, if I look on the inside, one thing you can see already is that we've got the we've got a fan up here. Now, we've only put one fan up here. Now, I'm going to talk to you in greater detail about this later, but we've got a fan here, and the only way to be able to get the cables out is at the end of that front section. There's no direct way to get them down into the back of the case. It would have been nice if there was a little cutout here or in the middle so that we could have poked the fan cables through, because having to go right way to the front is going to make things a bit messier. The only good thing about sending the fan cables from the top through that front section towards the front of the case would be if you were using a fan controller, and then you could plug the fan straight into the fan controller. There is plenty of room in the roof for a normal thickness 25mm fan, which is what we want. Especially if you're going to be water cooling really, and you've got LED lights or something, LED fans, quite a lot of you would want them in the roof of your case, so it obviously makes the outside of your case look a lot nicer. You could technically put a really skinny kind of 25mm thick water cooling radiator up here should you want to, but to be perfectly honest with you peeps, I would honestly advise against that, because when we do cover the layout and everything on the inside, you're much better off with a thicker radiator. But anyway, there is the possibility in the roof of fitting a 320mm fans or 340mm fans. You can also fit a 360mm radiator, so a 3x120 radiator. You can also fit a 3x140 radiator in the roof as well, should you wish. We'll talk later about the thicknesses and stuff when we get on the inside and we start covering that specifically. But I do quite like these little kind of subtle mesh strips, because they don't really do anything. There's a very marginal amount of air that can get passed underneath here should you have the roof panel clipped into place. There's a very, very small gap here that I suppose, hot air could eventually work its way out. But I think this is just a really nice touch. If I bring the camera down a little bit so you can see a little bit better, you can see the mesh there. It runs from end to end. It's a really nice touch. I also like the fact that you can take that roof panel section off, or that the vent section off really easily, and obviously just open and close it as you wish. If you were to close it up, many of you would think, well, what do I want to do that for? If you're leaving your computer for a long time, then you can close that up and it will stop the dust settling and ending up going down in your system. Although if you're using the fans as an exhaust, which is the way I would in the roof, so it exhausts the heat outwards, as soon as you plugged your rig on it, blow it all off anyway. Anyway, we're getting a little bit too in depth there now. So what I'm going to do is rejig the camera again, and we're going to have a look at the back panel. Right then peeps, back panel off, but we will be talking about the back panel again in just a moment. You can see that we've got the back panel off, like I've already said. Essentially, nice big cutout in the back. You can see that we've got an 8-pin CPU pass-through up here, which is not grommeted, but you never really see it, so it doesn't really matter. You can see there's lots of other grommets dotted around the case, but we'll show you those again when we look from the other side. But our motherboard is going to cover up these two slots because we've got an XL80X in ours. But you can see that you've got numerous amounts of other grommets and stuff. One thing I will say though is on this side, you need to keep your eye open. There's a cable for the front panel that comes out near the front. That's a SATA power connector, and that's for the LEDs that we're going to cover in a moment again when we get round towards the back. But really that's it. The room in the back of the case it isn't huge, but at the same time it's not tight either. You've got let's have a look. You've got about 15mm of room between the back of the motherboard tray and the door. There's quite a few clips dotted around for you to be able to secure all your cables to, across the top, down the side. There's even some up here so that you can clip your 8-pin CPU power up through. I would like to have seen some more down this side, in all honesty, or at least ways that we could have secured the hard drives cables in. One thing I will say for you though, which is quite worth pointing out, is because of the way the hard drive cages are configured, although we've used this as a good way of clipping the cables in, the hard drives do come out from this side. But, as you will see in a moment, you can take the whole hard drive cage out should you wish. If you wanted to take one out individually, it's just as easy to pop the back panel off, take the hard drive out, do whatever you've got to do, replace it, change the cable or anything like that, and then put it back in again. But you can access them from the other side should you wish. One thing I will say though is when you are building the rig, these hard drive handles are a really nice way of tucking your cables up. So if you're the type of person that's going to be building your rig and then probably leaving it on your side and forgetting about it, I would be telling you to utilise these as a good way to route your cables through. Something that is worth noting is a lot of the case has screws. Not all of it. Some people online seem to be thinking that the whole case is screwed together so that you can take it apart and paint it. Well, the bottom of the case is actually riveted. This part of the optical bays is riveted. But we'll be talking about that shortly anyway, and I'll explain why. But I'm going to get this back panel back on again now, and I'm going to we'll move around to the back and have a look at some of the features there. Right then peeps, round to the back of the case. I'm going to have to turn the lights off in a minute to show you something, but first of all, the quite a strange looking fan grille at the back. What this is a 140 and 120mm mount. And basically you can move the fan up and down. Now you may be wondering to yourself, why would I want to be doing that? Well, if you're just using air cooling, as you'll see on the inside, you'll move the fan right to the top to help get the air out of the top of your case out the back as well, so you don't end up with a hot spot up here. Because if you have the fan right down, the air won't be getting sucked out, so you'd move the fan up. As we've got in our system at the moment, you'll see that there's a radiator inside, and the radiator kind of covers this part up, so you move it slightly further down, because obviously the radiator is going to be sucking a lot of the hot air out then. So it's just a really nice way for you to be able to tune how you want your fan, how you want your case to perform, and they've not restricted you with just one mount. You can actually have a 140 or a 120 and still have all of this adjustment. It's actually a really, really nice touch. Now, if I move the camera further down, you can see that we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 PCI slots in the back. So that means up to an XL80X motherboard, which is what we've got fitted. In the bottom, I'm not going to move the camera down again. In the bottom, there is for your power supply, it's got the mount so you can have your power supply both ways. And as we all know, I always have mine mounted. Yes, I am messing about. I always have mine mounted what a lot of you say is upside down, but there is no strict way. Now what I'm going to do is just turn the lights off and show you something quickly. I know the camera is going to adjust, but there was the LED button in the front of the case. Now I'm just going to get my hand round so I can actually turn it on and off. But if I turn the system on, you'll see, there we go. You can see that there's an LED come on here and an LED come on here, and it's actually a really nice touch. I'd be tempted to leave them on all the time. I'm just going to switch off and on again so that you can see. But how many times have you been buggering around in the back of your system when it's, you know, low light or whatever, trying to get a cable in? And what they've basically done is added these LEDs so that it'll actually light the back of your rig up. It lights all the PCIs up, so you'd be easily get your DVI cable in, your HDMI cable, messing around with your wireless if you're mad enough to have wireless in a desktop, or the audio cables or whatever, USB in the top, anything really. I think this is pardon my French, but I think this is fucking genius. Because there's so many times I actually keep a torch on my desk, so that when I am doing stuff like this and it is getting later at night, literally I'll get the torch out so I can see what I'm doing better. This is fucking brilliant. I love it. But also, while we're here, oh, I could do this all night. You may have to come back in a minute. But anyway, we've got some rubber grommets there so you can pass water cooling hoses out should you need to. But something else I wanted to show you, I'm going to just make sure that the camera's zoomed right out. There we go. Here, and it's just like the old Phantom, there's two other screws on the back that fix it into place. But these are the latches for the doors. And essentially all you do is loosen them off a bit, and then they're spring loaded. And essentially what you do is you push them down, and then that can release the door. The same with refitting them, just push it down, put it in, and then that's it, it locks into place, and you just screw it back up to secure it again. Same on the other side, loosen it off a bit, push it down, it's a bit like a button, and then it releases the panel. It's actually, it was on the Phantom, and it works really, really well. I actually really like this. I'm surprised somebody else has not ripped this idea off yet, to be perfectly honest with you, because it's brilliant. I tend to seem to forget about putting the other screws back in and end up just running this. But it's good. The doors themselves aren't on hinges, but it just releases them so that you can then remove them properly. And it quite literally is so simple to fit them back on again afterwards. It's brilliant. And you're not messing about trying to line screws up and stuff, because this just makes it so much easier for you. But what I'm going to do now is rejig the camera again, and we're going to get our first look at the window and the main chamber and the hardware that we've got fitted inside. Right then peeps, so window, lovely big window. Oh, it's seems so long since I've had a decent window, but I've still got something I'd moan about it, because I think it comes a little bit too far over here. I think it would have been nice if it had come to this side and then come down at the same angle, or maybe slightly, you know, less of a pitch on it. But I think that they should have stopped it at the optical bay bit here, because I think it's I don't see any reason why we'd want to look at this, and I think going over to there would have been better, even if they'd like put a curve in the window or something. But again, that's just me being immensely picky, because like I said, it's so nice to see a nice big clean window. And please take note of this, specific manufacturers out there, there's no bloody fan grills in it. It's just a lovely bit of acrylic, the way it should be. So kudos to NZXT, because this is just, it's bliss. This is literally like my eyes are having sex with the window. It's lovely. But anyway, we'll pop the side panel off, and again I'll show you how simple it is. That's it. And if you wanted to refit it, you literally just line the front up and you push it in as you would do a normal door. It's not a hinge as such, but it kind of holds it in place. And you literally push the little thing down at the back, and that's it, done. Just remove it again, push the pin down, pull the door a bit, off. So simple, yet so effective, and it's lovely. Now, one thing I will say is that, to me, optically, in fact, I'm going to just move my lights about a bit so that you can get a little better look inside. But to me, optically, I think this case is actually quite deceiving, because it doesn't seem very big, but believe it or not, it's actually massive. It's bigger than the Stormtrooper. So yeah, I'm hoping you're going to be able to see. I should really stop the camera, but we'll make the changes live and I can look at, there we go, we'll leave it like that. Now, yeah, it's actually bigger than the Stormtrooper. We've got a full-size 60mm radiator in the roof, but we need to get quite specific about the water cooling in a bit, and I'm going to do the water cooling in its separate little segment afterwards. So we're going to concentrate on the hardware and the reviewing the other bits at the moment, and we'll talk about the water, you know, in its own bit in a minute. Power supply has a lovely set of feet. Now obviously we've got ours so that you can see the fan, but if you wanted to put it the opposite way round, the whole bottom of the floor is dust filtered, and it's something I should have showed you when we were around the back, but you push a little button around the back and then you actually slide out the dust filter. Now that's the power supply one, which is separate. Now something that Mr. Strawberry actually said to me is that there's one in the front as well, which is the long one. But how many times with a case have you had a massive dust filter at the back that if you want to remove it when you're cleaning it, it's about this long and you have to literally move your case away from the wall to be able to do it. With this one, the power supply one, is the short one, which, like I said, it's just another push clip fitting, and then the front one is the longer one. And as you'll see, because you can fit fans in the floor as well, all the floor is completely dust filtered, which is a lovely touch. But the reason why I say it's actually a really big case is we've got an XL ATX motherboard in here. This is actually a Gigabyte G1 Assassin. It's the full-on, you know, full meaty quad graphics card jobby. It's massive, and this case actually seems to be able to make it just, it kind of, to me, it just looks like an ATX board. It doesn't look big in there at all. Yet the case doesn't look enormous, like it's swallowing it. It's amazing. I love it. Something that I need to move the cameras for to be able to show you, and I should really, like I keep saying, I should really stop the camera, but I'm not going to. We're just going to do this live. You can see that you've got the 240mm fans in the front here. We know that we've got one in the front anyway, but there's 240mm fans here. Actually only comes with one. We've moved the one from the roof down here just to be able to show you. Now this little feature that I'm just about to show you, I think is a masterstroke. I love this as well. Basically, these are on the hard drive cages, and there's little screws here so that you can actually change the pitch or the angle, whatever you want to call it, of the fans. Now you may be thinking to yourself, why the bloody hell would I want to do that, Tom? But if you think about it, what it could technically be doing is aiming air more up towards your graphics cards. If you're running an air system, this could be brilliant, because it'll actually, like I said, help direct, rather than blowing air at your power supply, you angle it up a bit and it's now blowing air at your graphics card. May only make a minor bit of difference, but if you've got the fans there anyway and you're planning on having the fans there, why have the air blowing at your graphics card? Why have the air blowing at your power supply when you can angle it up like that? This, I can't believe people haven't done before. It's actually brilliant. And again, this is one of the things that shows that they really are starting to listen to people, and it's starting to kind of pay off. Now I'm just going to move the camera again. I don't care that we're still filming. This is a TTL video after all. If I made it too good, you'd think somebody else had made it. Right, hard drive cages. They're screwed in here. And you basically, if you want to remove them, you remove the screws. Now there's 6 sets of screws, so 6 screws altogether. 2 for this one, but there's another one in the bottom. Now I'm going to remove them all so that I can show you how they all come out. It's going to take me a little while. Again, I probably should. I know you're watching my shoulder. Lovely, sexy. I'm not rubbing my nipple, I'm rubbing the logo. Maybe I should go and rub my nipple. Too far? Yes, Tom, this is a review. Shut up. Right, so we're removing all these screws. And He-Man's done them up. But we've got them all out. Right, and basically there's these, as you can see, are like little grab rails, and then you can slide the hard drive dock out. And complete fail, but the fan is actually wired in on the other side. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to remove the fans quickly. Dong. Right, we did such a good job of cable tied in that we had literally clipped everything right up. So, hard drive dock, got these little handles so that you can pull them out. And basically, whole hard drive dock comes out. Now that obviously is a way that you can get access to the hard drives from this side, but you can access the, do you know what I mean? You can remove these and work on them from the other side as well. But these do come out. You don't have to use them. You can use 1, you can use 2. It really doesn't matter. It does become a bit of a mission with the bottom fan, because with the bottom fan, as you'll see, when we've got the 140 in, it gets caught. I'll show you. There we go. It gets caught. So what you have to do is you have to pitch the fan up, change the angle of the fan, and then you can slide it out. Get the fan cable. There we go. They all come out. So we're going to they're removed now because we need them to be removed for later on. And it also exposes the extra fans in the bottom. Now this really for me is where the water cooling side of things comes in. We'll cover that in a minute, but this panel, when we come back to the water cooling segment, this panel will be gone because you can unscrew this. So let me just rejig the camera a bit. Obviously I'll show you just quickly what I said to you about the power supply. You can see there that you've got, it's actually got 6 feet, but then you've got the hexagon mesh area if you were to have your power supply facing down, but obviously I always have mine facing up because I prefer that for the way it looks. Now, quite strangely, again we'll show you this in a minute, but this is one of the few parts of the case that can't be removed, because this top panel can, this optical bay can't. It's one of the few bits that's actually riveted in, but we'll show you that in a minute. You've got spare thumb screws here, which is obviously quite handy, but it's just quite sad that you can see these through the window. The NZXT toolless mechanism in this one actually works. It locks and it doesn't move, it's locked in place. Push it out and you can release it. Now we've got basically 3 optical bays available, and then if you've got the hot swap bay at the bottom, which you could use as an optical bay as well should you wish. And the hot swap bay, like I said, it can be completely removed, and it's just a couple of screws here and here, a couple of screws on the other side, and you can just whiz the panel out. Now again, this is going to need a camera rejig, but you can see there that we've got the Havoc 140 fitted. And even though the Havoc is quite big, I'm looking for my ruler because I know I had it just a second ago, even though the Havoc's quite big, it's actually still a good, I'm going to say 45, no we'll go for 40 to be safe, millimetre away from the outside of the case. And the reason why there's so much room is because of this 140mm exhaust actually gives you a decent amount of depth to the case. So even the Fantex cooler with its humongous 140mm fans, or even the Thermalright Silver Arrow, if you had the fan over the ram, you'd still be able to get the door on, and you'd still be able to get it fitted. So that's pretty much it. All we need to do is kind of show you the grommets that I said to you about before. You can see that you've got 2 there and 2 there. There's 2 in the bottom. If you run a normal ATX cable, a normal ATX motherboard rather, there's 2 more hidden just under here in the on the motherboard. Something that is quite strange though is, even though this has got the 9 slots for XL ATX, the case doesn't actually have the 3 motherboard standoffs for the XL ATX motherboard. It does fit, but these 3 just aren't here. These 2 screws that are here actually go into where the second set of grommets are up underneath, and this one on this side's just not there at all. That's not really a problem per se, but it is just worth mentioning. Something else is, if you are running an XL ATX motherboard like this and you're planning on running a graphics card in the bottom, it could only be single slot, because this slot here lines perfectly up with the last slot on the back of the case. So if you're planning on running an XL ATX motherboard with 4 cards, or you need a double card in the bottom, then you'll need a 10 slot case, not a 9 slot case. But for the most part, 99% of you guys out there, that if you have one of these boards, you're probably going to be running something like Crossfire anyway, so it's really not going to be a problem for you. So yeah, it won't be an issue at all. But just like I said to you, this case actually does swallow all this hardware really, really easily. And it's deceptively, because the case doesn't look that big, but even though this hardware, I would say, is of kind of ample proportions, it doesn't look out of place in there at all, and I really like it. But what I'm going to do now is I'm going to stop the video and I'm going to start talking to you about the water cooling stuff. I need to get a couple of little bits ready. We're going to have quite a few swapping the case, you know, rejigging of the case and stuff, so I can get stuff explained. But yeah, so this is where the water cooling stuff is going to start, and I just need to get myself ready for it. Right then peeps, we're going to start at the bottom and we're going to work our way up. And there's a fair amount to cover, to be perfectly honest with you. But, floor. The mounts are there and they are right for, I'm just going to turn this round, for a 240mm radiator in the floor. Now, one thing I will say is if you have a 240mm rad in the floor, obviously we're using a 60mm thick radiator here and we've got 2 sets of fans on it as well. Something to show you that they've really put a lot of thought into this is the fact that obviously we've got push-pull on this radiator and the radiator fan literally comes perfectly level with the bottom of the motherboard. Now that couldn't have been a mistake. That's, you know, that's a great bit of design there that they've made that perfect. So we've got 60mm thick rad, 50mm of fans in total, so we've got 110mm, and that's literally within a couple of millimeters the perfect height from the floor to the start of the motherboard. It's fucking genius. It's awesome. Also, one thing that I will say to you though is a 240mm rad in the floor with your power supply. It's not going to be too much of a problem. This power supply is actually slightly longer. It's 180mm long. And you can see that if you add your barbs at this end, it wouldn't be too much of a problem. One thing I will say is if you switch the radiator around as I had it to start with, you may have problems with it hitting the front of the case. So you probably end up with your end tank where your barbs go being closer to the power supply. So 120mm rad, go careful with your power supply length. About 180mm, 190mm maximum would be the length I would suggest if you're going to be wanting to run a radiator in the bottom. It changes though, because if you can also use a 280mm rad in the bottom, so 240mm fan radiator. Many of them about now, they're becoming a lot more popular. I've certainly been getting requests left, right and centre to use them. So if you want to use a 280mm radiator in the bottom, I would then say that the maximum power supply length that you can go to is a normal ATX length, which is 160mm. 160mm length. Probably just to pick them out of the box because I know they are that length, are the Corsair AX power supplies, and they go up to 850 watts. That will fit in here absolutely smack bang lovely. You can still run 2 graphics cards off of it, like 2 7970s and a 2100, 2011 CPU if you want to, 2 580s even if you really want to push it. But that will fit with a 280mm power supply. That will fit with a 280mm graphics card. Crikey, 280mm radiator, I will get my words out. And this is one of the reasons why I wanted to be really anal about the advice I'll give you with the radiators here, because the other reviews that I've seen, they've just not mentioned any of this at all. And it's then kind of, surely that's the point in the review in the first place. Anyway, right. This radiator support with the case in the front. Now, technically, there isn't radiator support in the front of the case. That is the technical, you know, that's what they're going to tell you. But you can do if you want. There is room. So what we're going to do, I'm going to just flip this round, and I'll say, if you get it in there, you can literally mil perfect line the fans up, at least on this radiator at least. You will have to take this plastic runner off, but you can line it up with the front 120mm fan mounts. Now, that would be the top 120mm fan mounts, because the lower ones don't match up. They've kind of missed a little bit of a trick here, to be honest with you, because if they'd made the 120s 15mm apart, then they would have fit perfect. But there's a lot bigger gap there. So if you want to use a radiator in the front, you just screw the radiator. They just use the top fan screws, but it won't line up with the bottom ones. Same again. You can fit a dual 140mm fan, a radiator, sorry, in the front. Now this is where it gets really confusing, but I'm not going to fit these back in properly. But I'm just going to throw the screws everywhere. But I'm just going to show you something quick, and I'm going to do this as quickly as I possibly can do. with you on the camera, but the basically the bays that go in the front, I don't think they're going to all slide in together now, but I'm going to try my best. These bays are actually quite clever. Now these aren't designed this way, it just seems to be the luck of what's happened. Right, so we've got those back in. These, again, where you've got the 140mm fans here, if you want to, you can just about get away with screwing in a 280mm rad. And obviously we would have the fans there, but the 280mm rad would easily fit then between the end of this and where the graphics card. As long as you've not got a massive graphics card, you can get a radiator here. So in the front of the case, we've now got three options. In the floor, right at the very front, or then slightly in front of the hard drive docks. I would, to be perfectly honest with you, if it was me, I'd take the hard drive docks out, because obviously I don't have a lot of hard drives, I'm an SSD user, and I'd either have it in the floor or in the front. If you want to use in the floor or in the front, and you have hard drives, you can get 5.25 inch to 3.5 inch hard drive optical bay adapters, and one optical bay adapter can hold 2 hard drives, so you could easily get a couple of hard drives in the bay here. Absolute doddle to fit. They're dampered as well, so it won't put the vibrations into the case, and then that still gives you a couple of bays free to use a bay res should you want as well. Now what I'm going to do quickly is I need to rejig now and show you the front of the case, because we need to cover something with the top radiator. Right then peeps, this is looking in from the front of the case, and this is one of the things that I found quite perplexing really. It kind of confused me a lot, because this is one of the few parts in the case that can't just be unscrewed. This whole bay section here, this whole kind of the 3 bays, is riveted in the front, and this panel I think should be able to be unscrewed, because if you fit a 60mm radiator in there, it's what we will call double thick, or I actually call them normal size to be perfectly honest with you. So 60mm rads, your RX 360 is one from XSPC, but there's loads of people that make them out there now, but say 60mm thick. If you fit a 60mm thick radiator in, and then have a set of fans on as well, then the fan actually touches or is very, very close to that panel. Now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to show you this from the other side so you can get a better idea of what's going on. Right then peeps, so you can see a better idea from this side, but I wanted to show you from the front as well so you could see how close it was. As you can see, literally it's covering up, I'd say, a third of the fan there, and it's so close. Now I know what NZXT are going to say, because if I move this up, this panel here, this top bit, can be removed. Like this can be completely removed, and it can on the other side as well. Now my argument for this is really, all that's then doing is showing you the side of the fan. It's not actually helping with where the air wants to go in. Now I think that either they need to remove a section of this plate so it basically wouldn't cover up the fan, or they just need to be able to make this plate removable rather than it being bonded in place. Just a few screws that you can take it out. But this is where we start getting really complicated, and to be perfectly honest with you, with water cooling reviews, you've either got to, you know, show everything or just don't bother at all, to be perfectly honest with you. But I'm going to go with I'm going to flood you with the information, and then those of you out there that actually understand what I'm talking about will find this information useful. Now, I was under the impression with this case, because it's so close, that you could run push-pull with a 60mm radiator. And I honestly thought it, well, the first time I looked at it, I was like, there's acres of room there, you'd be able to run push-pull. But if you have a look here, as we look down, there's a heatsink at the top of our motherboard. Now it doesn't protrude out of the top of the motherboard at all. It's only on the actual motherboard bit. But it's the heatsink that's stopping us screw or fit the fan. So we can't get it in. It's about 3mm in it. So one thing I will say is the rest of the things across the top of the motherboard, not a problem. We've got easy access to the RAM DIMMs and everything. But if you've got a heatsink at the top of your board like that, and you want to run a 60mm rad, you will not be able to run push-pull. And to be perfectly honest with you, as far as I'm concerned, if you can't fit all 3 fans on the rad, or all 2 fans, depending on how big your radiator is, if you can't fit all the fans that you should do, I wouldn't run push-pull, because it just, for me, it would ruin the look. It all needs to be kind of balanced and match. So just to throw you an idea out, this is obviously the G1 Assassin, but the Rampage 4 Extreme, that won't fit with push-pull on this. So you've either got to have a slightly smaller radiator or not run push-pull. And in all honesty, guys, I would say my advice would be to get a full-size radiator. So get the full-size 60mm rad and just run a single bank of fans, or, because Alpha Cool have got them now, you can get 80mm thick radiators. I would kind of be leaning towards getting an even thicker radiator and still just running the single set of fans. Now, something else that I wanted to say is all of the top of the case can be unscrewed. There's a screw here, there we go, screws here, screw there, same at the other side. You can actually remove the roof to make it easier for you to be able to drop a radiator in, because the thing is if you've got all your system in there, it would actually be quite difficult to be able to try and shoehorn a radiator in and screw it all up and everything. So the idea is that you just literally whiz the whole roof off, screw your fans in, get your radiator, everything in, and then you put the roof back on with your radiator in as one piece. It's what we've done. With your radiator in as one piece, that's how we found we couldn't get it up, because we couldn't get the screws in. But then you drop your radiator in as one piece, and then you finish off your hosing. One thing I will say though is be very clear about this when you build your rig. Because of where that bar is for the fan, you do need to make sure that your barbs are this end of the case, fan end, so back end of the case. If you put your barbs at the other end of the case, you could have problems with trying to get your hose out because of where that plate is. That's another reason why that plate is a complete pain in the arse. So this case is very, very good for water cooling. You just need to be careful with it. And it's only really where I've been building water cooling rigs for so long that I can just look at these and see problems instantly. And it's a bit of a shame, because when you go to a reviewer for stuff like this, I think I think that a lot of people should, know more about this now. And there's one person in particular that's been given such bad water cooling advice lately that it's actually painful to watch the reviews. It's actually telling people the completely wrong stuff. So now I've taken it upon myself to be so clear. I don't care how long the review's going to end up. The information's there for you to be able to deal with it and make the proper choices. And also, you'll only ever have to buy your hardware once, and you can see problems here. Like I said, make sure that you have your barbs at this end of the case, that you're only ever going to have to fit stuff once if you're careful and listen to the review. But we've completely decimated this case now, ripping it apart to show you radiators and all the different options and stuff like that. So what I'm going to do now is we are a long way in. I'm going to get myself a drink of water, because I'm starting to lose my voice where I've been talking for so long. But then I'm going to get jigged up and we're going to do a conclusion and get this finally wrapped up. But long and short of it, guys, is that this case is brilliant. Right then, guys, on to the conclusion for the 810, Switch 810, whatever you want to call it. Instantly, straight away, Gold Award. Now, there's going to be two sets of people out there now, I know instantly. Some people are going to be going, yeah, bloody right, it deserves a Gold Award. And then there's another lot of people out there that they live at the bottom of your garden and they sit on mushrooms and stuff like that. I think a lot of people call them trolls. But they're going to be saying, oh, he's just being nice to NZXT so he can get parts again. And it's not, it really isn't. To be perfectly honest with you, I'd love to have given this a lesser award. Just, if anything, to have poked him in the eye. But I've got to be honest, this is really good. There's a few things that they could change on it to make it even better, but not enough for me not to give it a gold award. It's 150 quid. Now, water cooling support in this is chuffing brilliant. And I mean absolutely brilliant. It's, to be perfectly honest with you, I think it's probably the first decent water cooling case NZXT have ever made. Now, in my eyes, this is, to be put, yeah, it's, the Phantom was brilliant when it first came out. This is like the Phantom good moving on again. It's really, really good. Obviously you can get full-sized, you can get XLTX cases in there. I'm using so many wrong words today. You can get XL ATX motherboards in there. E-ATX motherboard, doesn't matter. You can even get kind of server length boards in here. The screws would make you think that you could get like an SR2 in or something in there. I don't know. The official documents, so like the manual and stuff, don't mention the SR2 as being supported or the SR2 form factor. So we'll say it's not. But hard drives, obviously you can get 8 hard drives in it. There's cooling options galore. You've got those lovely adaptable pitch fans that you can direct the air up wherever you want to go. The fan at the back can go up and down. You've got the lights for the PCIs and the I/O at the back. The kind of the plate in the top. Things I'd pick up on. The fan cable routing for the fans that you'll have in the roof, bit iffy. Could do with at least a grommet up there to be able to pass it down into the main chamber rather than having everything to have to go out the front way. Not too keen on that. It seems quite strange that the only bit of the case that seems to not be able to be removed properly is the bit that's actually causing us the problem. Now, I know that you can remove this panel altogether, but that's still going to be starving this fan a little bit of air. So if this cage could be removed, or at least that plate that I showed you, be removed, that would be brilliant, because it's not only the fan that's going to cause a problem with that. It'd be if you wanted to have the barbs for your radiator at the other end, you wouldn't really be able to, because you'd have no way of getting them out. Ways around it for me would be run the fans in the roof, obviously making sure that they're pulling and exhausting the air out the roof. You can get a 60mm rad in easy, but if you were going to go, you were thinking about going push-pull, it does make a little bit of difference, but not a massive amount. The only time that you really need push-pull is if you've got crap fans, to be honest with you. If you're going to be investing in something like the NFF12s, then it'll make a bit of a difference. But the average fans that people use, not really going to make a lot of difference. I would probably go with, like I said, AlphaCool do it, and I think some other brands have got them out now, but they do 80mm thick radiators. You can get one of those in here, and it will fit fine. It will still end up being quite close to this plate at this end, but no different to having the fan in there. Obviously you have the barbs at this end would be my best advice, because again you'll run into problems at this end. In the floor, obviously you've got this whole dust filter here for the radiator if you fit it in the floor, but you've also got the dust filter, in fact you'll unclip, if you wanted to fit it in the front. Now, radiator in the floor, dual 120 or dual 140 you can get in. You just have to be a little bit careful with your power supply. Up to 190mm for a dual 120, up to 160mm for a dual 140. Very specific on that as well, because otherwise you will run into some horrific problems with your cables. But also, like I said, you can get a radiator in the floor, you can get a radiator in the front, you can even get a radiator balanced on the end of the hard drive bays, should you wish. So the front really is the best. You can get lots of options in there. Now, people keep telling me about capacity. So I'm going to do a separate video just on water cooling this, but just to put it into context, this radiator in the roof, and we'll go with hot stuff. So if your CPU isn't going to be as hot as a 2011, you'll know you've got a little bit more capacity. But if you had a 60mm radiator in the roof, you could easily cool a 2011 processor and a 580 or a 7970. And I mean, you'd be fine. if you wanted to add a second 7970 in there or something like that, that would be at the point then that I'd be telling you to get a second radiator in the floor. People may end up saying, oh, you can get it all on one radiator, but for me, water cooling is about having your fans on nice and low and quiet, but still having ridiculously good temperatures. And I mean low temperatures, because if you're investing all that money in it, what's the point in then chucking it all on one radiator and then it being no cooler than it being on air? Or having a radiator with fans blowing so hard over it to keep everything cool that it's noisier than air. So if you're going to go SLI or Crossfire, I would say get a second radiator in the floor. Doesn't really matter what, just make sure you stick with a relatively thick one, whether it's a 240 or a 480. Obviously then you're going to be talking about getting decent pumps and stuff. Because I quite like, for just a CPU loop, the Bay Reses with a pump built in, like the XSPC all-enclosed ones. But if you start talking about, you know, multiple radiators, multiple blocks, especially if you're going to be talking motherboard blocks and stuff like that, which then, if you've got a couple of graphics cards, a CPU, your motherboard blocks, and a couple of radiators, to keep it all cool, you're going to need a decent pump. So you're then talking something along the lines of the D5 or the DDCs, just to make sure that you can keep everything flowing around there. I'm not going to go into any more depth with the water cooling, because I am going to do a dedicated water cooling guide on this anyway. But the long and short of it is, for 150 quid, this case is going to be hard to beat for water cooling. It's better than a half X for water cooling, because obviously you've got a radiator option at the top and you get a radiator option in the bottom. It's much better built than the Elysium, because to be perfectly honest with you, the Elysium felt so cheap and flimsy, and it was just big. This I would choose any day over something like the Elysium. I'm trying to think of other water cooling cases in my head, but you then talking Stormtrooper, you get a RAD 240 in the top, 240 in the bottom, or a 360 in the front, but it gets kind of complicated. And then beyond that, you end up paying an immense amount of money. So I'm going to make a bold statement here and say, for the kind of price range from 125 quid up to about 175 quid for water cooling, especially for ease of water cooling as well, like bolt in, I would say that this is probably the best case in that price bracket available for water cooling at this present moment in time. They do it in white, they do it in black, so you've got plenty of options there to be able to tie the looks and the aesthetics of your system in with not only the you know, like your hose and everything, but make your case and everything all fit in as well. I can say is that if you're going to be building a rig in this, take your time. Too many people out there nowadays will just rush everything and they end up with something slightly substandard, because they rush out and buy a power supply that's too big, or they rush out and they buy fans that aren't that great, or they rush out and they buy, you know, your water cooling pump that could have looked better. Take your time, sit there, think about it, because to be perfectly honest with you guys, you could make an epic system out of this if you put your mind to it. And there's no excuses. I've given you so much information with about the hardware that you can get in this now, the water cooling support, everything like that, that there's no reason for you now not to take a little bit of time. So what if it takes you an extra week to choose your hardware? Do it properly, do it once, and you'll save yourself money in the long run as well. And like I said, you can make an epic rig out of this. Actually, I'm going to say something else now. This is the best NZXT case to be released ever. They really have got it right with this one. There's so many different options with it. There's so many ways that you can do this, do that. There's only a couple of minor niggles, and it's so close. If the things that I've picked up about it being wrong, if they weren't there, this would have been one of the few times that I would had to have produced an award better than a gold award. It's that close to being that great. So if they had to fix the problems, that's how good it could have been. But anyway, I know I've spoken a long time. I've still got to have more water because my voice is going, and I've got another video on this to now make. But yeah, absolutely awesome. And just think, NZXT, if you'd sent this to me at launch, how long you could have had a gold award for, and how long you could have actually had a review live where the bloke that did the review actually knew what he was talking about with water cooling as well. Now, if Straw kicks the tripod one more time, I'm literally going to stick my knee in his nuts. But yeah, I don't want to sound big-headed about water cooling, but I'm really, really passionate about it. And when I hear people being given the wrong advice, it actually makes me angry, because I think to myself, what happens if he actually takes that advice and goes and wastes a load of money? So that's one of the reasons why I've literally taken this apart in such detail. But yeah, I'm going to do another dedicated video on it just to cover the water cooling. But anyway, yes, NZXT, you could have had all this, 2 months ago, and it's your own fault that you delayed it. I should really have just said I wasn't going to review it, but it was too good to turn down. But anyway, I'm going to love you and leave you guys. We've finally got round to covering the Switch 810, and I'm glad we did as well. So yes, love you and leave you. Gold award, thoroughly deserves it. So close to even needing me to create a special award for it. It's that good. But anyway, this is Tiny Tom Logan. I'm pretty sure I've said this before. Out.